I'm my name is Mark Rodefer. I'm with the Sierra Club. I'm the Sierra Club DC chapter, and I'm our Beyond Gas co-chair. But Beyond Gas is much more than the Sierra Club. We're a partnership of the Sierra Club, Washington Interfaith Network, and Interfaith Power and Light, and also other groups as part of our strong coalition of climate, housing, and affordability advocates. And we're not just doing this work in DC. We're also working in Maryland with Interfaith Power and Light (DMV), which works in both DC and Maryland, and also Action in Montgomery, known as AIM. In Montgomery County, Maryland. And of course, the Sierra Club Maryland chapter is a key part of this effort. And it's not just those groups. We're a growing coalition of climate and faith organizations dedicated to raising public awareness of the climate and health dangers of burning gas in our homes and other buildings. We need to accelerate the move away from polluting air in our homes and polluting the climate, and we need to do that by moving off methane gas. We're here today because we just released a report called Cooking Up Danger after 2 years of a citizen science investigation of gas stove emissions in homes and houses of worship in DC and Maryland. Our objectives today are to share the results of our investigation with our local communities and building electrification advocates nationwide. And we also want to talk about how the study was conducted and the power of citizen science as a tool to broaden and deepen climate and housing justice organizing. And we'll be hearing from some of the people who were key players in this effort. And that includes Barbara Briggs, who is the convener of the Beyond Gas Climate and Faith Coalition and the lead on the kitchen testing report. Also, Madama Musa Haruna. She's an organizer with Action in Montgomery. Also, Katie Meyer, a clean energy campaign representative with the Sierra Club, and Maddie Smith, a clean energy shepherd with Interfaith Power and Light DMV, and Sidra Siddiqui, an organizer with Washington Interfaith Network. It's really a great group of people, and I couldn't be more proud to be working with them. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll reserve the last 20 minutes for discussion and questions. And now I'm going to pass it to our interpreters to hear about how to participate in today's conversation in both English and Spanish.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. I will first give these instructions in Spanish and in English and then in Spanish. My name is Maria Angelica, my pronouns are they and she, and today you're providing interpretation into Spanish with Marb Language Services to ensure that we can all participate here in the language that we prefer between English and Spanish. For folks who prefer to listen in Spanish, if you're joining from the computer, please click on the globe at the bottom of your screen that says interpretation and choose Spanish. If you're joining from a phone or a tablet, please tap on the 3 dots at the bottom right of your phone that say more, choose interpretation, choose Spanish, and at the top right, tap done. If you have any issues with interpretation at any point, please let us know in the chat and we'll be happy to support you. And a loving reminder, for folks who will be speaking today to please speak at a moderate pace so that we can interpret everything you're saying and we don't leave anyone behind. Thank you. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es María Angélica, mis pronombres son ella y ella, y hoy estaremos proveyendo interpretación al español con Marb Language Services para asegurarnos de que hoy todos podamos participar y tener acceso a esta información en el espacio, en el idioma que prefiramos, entre el español y el inglés. Si ustedes prefieren escuchar en español y están conectando desde un computador, por favor hagan clic en el globo abajo donde dice interpretación y eligen español. Si están conectando desde un teléfono o una tableta, por favor toquen los 3 puntos abajo a la derecha donde dice interpretación y elijan español. Y arriba a la derecha toquen finalizado. También estamos poniendo las instrucciones en el chat. Si en algún momento tienen alguna dificultad con la interpretación, por favor déjennos saber en el chat y con mucho gusto les apoyaremos. Y un amoroso recordatorio a las personas que van a ser oradores hoy, que por favor hablen a una velocidad moderada para poder interpretar todo lo que vayan a compartir y no dejar a nadie atrás. Gracias. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for those directions on following the Spanish translation of today's webinar. And now let's hear from Barbara Briggs, who led the kitchen testing effort.
Good morning, everybody. Before we get to the results, I want to take just a second to talk about how we got here and why we decided to do this study. About 4 years ago, we began our first citizen science investigation, and it was when DC's Public Service Commission refused to provide data on gas leaks under DC streets that we knew they had. And at that point, we decided to find out for ourselves. It was just as the pandemic was beginning, it was something we could do outside, and we thought that it was important that people have this information. So climate and faith activists, our partner groups, students, neighbors looked for leaks across all 8 wards of DC, and we found nearly 400 gas leaks. Of those, 14 of them were potentially explosive. Over 100 people had helped with the investigation, and in the time we spent together, we learned together about gases' impact on climate and on public health. We got the data, but we also found that there's no better way to share information, to build understanding and engagement than citizen science. Meanwhile, we were learning more and more about the health impact of gas when it's burned in our homes. And together, we also wanted to strengthen the fight that WIN and AIM were having and were deeply involved in for affordable housing, but to make sure that that housing was affordable, green housing and healthy for the people who lived in it. So we decided to launch another community science investigation to measure families' exposure to pollutants from gas stoves. And that's the investigation that we're talking about today. We chose stoves because of all the gas burning appliances. Stoves are not required to be vented to the outside, and most are not. And so they're polluting our indoor air right where we live. We chose to measure nitrogen dioxide for several reasons. Its health effects, including worsening asthma, bronchitis, COPD, lung ailments, are immediate. Also, the equipment is affordable and it can be operated by a trained volunteer. So it was something that we could do. So we got a bunch of equipment, and Adama will be talking about that in a moment. But so that we don't bury the lead, here's what we found. We did testing between September of 2022 and September of 2024. We conducted 663 tests within that time period. Of those, 63% recorded nitrogen dioxide levels greater than 100 parts per billion, which is the EPA's standard for the maximum for a 1-hour exposure. In other words, that's their health protected standard, no more than 100 parts per billion for 1 hour. In DC, it was even worse. 77% of homes, in other words, more than 3/4 of homes recorded readings of over 100 parts per billion. The average high reading was 181 parts per billion. In Montgomery County, 53% of homes, over half, tested with readings of over 100 parts per billion, what the EPA is safe for a 1-hour exposure. And the average high reading was 159 parts per billion. All the kitchens we tested, every one of them had readings that were at least in the double digits. We thought that we'd be able to find a clean line, that small kitchens would have very high concentrations of nitrogen dioxide and larger kitchens would have smaller readings, but we were in for some surprises. Yes, small kitchens, especially enclosed kitchens with just one door, tended to have higher nitrogen dioxide readings, but some large kitchens had pretty high readings too. We think that ventilation and airflow is a really important factor. Also, some families with large kitchens that we tested had recently purchased very large gas stoves with double coil burners that simply burn a lot of gas. So, people who can renovate their kitchens and have larger kitchens are not immune from this problem. A couple of anecdotal observations that we included in the report. We discovered almost by accident that nitrogen dioxide rises. It goes up to the ceiling and to upper floors in at least some homes. So we took some tests in kids' bedrooms, and guess what? We found fairly high numbers. We also did a smaller number of tests for longer periods, for 4 hours after the stove was shut off. And we found that NO2 can persist in the air for 3 or 4 hours. Yes, it goes down, but it also sticks around. So I'm going to ask Leslie to come up for a second to talk about translation and getting access to the Spanish translation. And then if Adama can come up and talk about the next, give the next part of our presentation.
Hola, buenas tardes. Solo quería dar otro recordatorio de que tenemos interpretación disponible en español y estamos poniendo las instrucciones en el chat, así que por favor busquen por eso si quieren escuchar este programa en español. Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. My name is Adama, and here I'm gonna show you how we do the testing. So we use this machine. I don't know if you can see it. We use this machine called Aerocol 300 with a nitrogen dioxide sensor head to test the indoor air quality. I live in Cider Mill, so I did most of my testing in Cider Mill apartment and at the enclave in Silver Spring. So when we go to an apartment, we ask the resident to turn on their stove. But normally the protocol of the testing is to do like the oven at 350 degrees and then 2 burner. Instead, in Cider Mill, since we don't use the oven, we turn on the 4 burners. And we wrote down the NO2 measurements when we turn on the stove on 15 minutes, 30 minutes. We wrote the level, and we have this form where we collect the data. And then the stove was turned off, and we wrote the NO2 level 15 minutes also after we turn off the stove. While we're doing this, we also measure the size of the kitchen. We also share information about the NO2, nitrogen dioxide, that is a pollutant that comes from burning gas in our stove and heating. And we also share that nitrogen dioxide contributes to asthma, bronchitis, and a lot of respiratory illness. So it's very important to know what our family are being exposed to. And we can take immediate measure, like opening our window or doors, like turning on the fan, which a lot of our apartment, the fan don't work. And we also advise people to use like the microwave or the electric kettle or air fryer or rice cooker. At the end, we gave the tenant this towel. I don't know if we can see it too. This towel, and everybody love it. It's show how to reduce emission in your home in English and Espanol. We also talk about how organize the tenant. So there are a lot of assumptions, like if you are an immigrant or a person of color, or if you are living in an apartment complex that you don't want electric. So by doing this work, we did this work. I started doing this work, and then now we have like a lot of team all over in Montgomery County, here in Cider Mill. It's me, Lorena, Hoya, and Jamila. At Northwest Park apartment, we have Anna Argueta. And Westchester West in Silver Spring, we have Lucia and Maria. And at the Enclave, we have Sergin. So by doing this work, we show that those assumptions are totally not true. And we show also Tena how climate and health is so radical. And by organizing, doing the testing, we were able to make sure that those leaders go with us in Annapolis to advocate for themselves and asking our delegates and senator to make sure that we as Tena are not being left behind, and we as Tena want to be a part of the solution. We also advocate, like we want to advocate as a real people, real residents that are impacted with these nitrogen dioxide, that all the apartments that we've been testing have high level of NO2, more than the EPA recommended outdoor. So I would like to say also that it takes the community to make this happen. Here we have the renter, organizer, policy experts. We have the support of Delegate Charkoudian, who work with us closely. And right now, because of all this testing that we have been doing with our leaders at K Management, we are working with the landlord that already applied to have to make sure that the apartment is gonna move from gas to electric. And I think now I'm gonna pass it to Katie.
Thank you so much, Adama. My name is Katie. I'm with the Sierra Club DC chapter. I'm a clean energy organizer. I joined the Sierra Club DC chapter a few months after the testing had begun. And as I continued to do more testing myself, I saw more and more how it went hand in hand with the organizing that we were doing within our Beyond Gas campaign within DC. We were working to pass the Healthy Homes Act in DC, which is a bill that will allow 30,000 low and moderate income households to move off of gas at no cost and upgrade their gas-powered appliances to energy efficient electric ones. So as I would talk to people in these testing visits about gas and the Healthy Homes Act and the problem of gas in homes, more and more people were interested in taking action and asking me, how can I get involved? How can I support? So I started bringing postcards to council members on some of these testing visits to ask people to write their council members to urge them to support the Healthy Homes Act. And including things like advocacy days or our petition to support the Healthy Homes Act in our follow-up. In addition, I started organizing events like Bagels and Beyond Gas at local libraries. We hosted events in 7 out of 8 wards in DC, and these were really to provide informal, hyper-local opportunities to chat about the work in DC, to move beyond gas and towards clean energy, and talking about the kitchen testing, both in being able to let people know about the wider movement in each testing visit, but also to be able to talk about the kitchen testing in some of these Bagels and Beyond Gas events was really meaningful, and it was really able to help people get involved in a deeper way. So in addition to doing testing myself, I started to match volunteers with people who had signed up to testing. As we were doing more and more of this and seeing how important these conversations were for our organizing, we knew we had to scale up in DC and we had to do a whole lot more tests. So I started organizing tester trainings, and even reaching out to other groups who helped a lot with this testing, including but not limited to groups like Chesapeake Climate Action Network, Nature Forward, Third Act, Citizens Climate Lobby, Anacostia Parks and Recreation Collaborative, DC Environmental Justice Coalition, and many, many more. So we used a shared sign-up form with Sierra Club, with Washington Interfaith Network, Interfaith Power and Light, and many of their congregations to put out to those lists. And then also really encouraging folks to post on their neighborhood listservs, their work listservs, or even like parent or church groups, people shared those with their networks. And using this relational outreach meant we were able to really cast a wide net and engage a lot of people we wouldn't have otherwise been able to engage. It was really exciting to me to see people that I first heard about the testing because someone sent it around to their neighborhood listserv, and then to watch them get involved in the fight to pass healthy homes in an even deeper way. So as we did more of this outreach and training, we really expanded our knowledge around the issue and got more people involved in our effort to get the Healthy Homes Act passed. And in May, the Healthy Homes Act did successfully pass the DC Council. So this overall was really successful, and really overall takeaway is organizing is doing this testing and vice versa. Every single conversation that we had with people, like I was in people's homes for 30, 40 minutes, sometimes even an hour, having a conversation about this issue and why it matters and how they can really take action. So really letting people see the real impacts that this issue has on their life, and also like how they can move the needle at the DC Council levels was really important. So these relationships built conversation by conversation will really make a lasting impact in being able to move DC beyond gas. And I do want to share, so we capped testing on this report in September, but we still kept on doing this because these relational conversations are really, really important. And I do want to share that we're now at over 750 tests. Yeah, really, really exciting. I'm going to pass it on over to Maddie.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. My name is Maddie Smith. My pronouns are they, them. I am with Interfaith Power and Light, DC, Maryland, Northern Virginia. And, as Adama and Katie said, it's really easy to get folks involved in this process because people see what's the levels in their kitchen are like, and it's an immediate entry point into the wider spread changes that we need to see policy wise. And so, Adama had shared about how, the tips that are on the kitchen towel that we share with folks, including ventilation, including after the stove is turned off, because we, noticed in the results that that's a big problem. And in some cases, folks were able to provide little induction cooktops in the case of when, the levels were really bad in people's homes. But these are short-term fixes. If you can't afford to replace your gas stove and cap the gas line and sometimes, update your electrical panel, that's not everyone has access to that solution. So long term, this is a problem that we have to solve together with our governments. So here are some of our recommendations that have come out of this work for both policymakers in DC and Maryland. We need to move forward and transition away from fossil fuel heating and, cooking, and towards, clean and efficient electric systems. So as Katie mentioned, the DC Council unanimously passed the Healthy Homes Act, which creates a program to provide electrification retrofits to 30,000 low and moderate income residents by 2040. And this is all, if you're income qualified for the program, this is all at no cost to the resident. And this is something we're really excited about. And a lot of folks, as Katie said, you know, worked really hard to make this happen. The catch there is funding sources. The catch is always in implementation, it seems like. So we need to, DC will need to identify funding sources to fund the Healthy Homes law to make sure that this, you know, is actually able to happen for folks. And, you know, together we continue to work on that. Okay, so in Maryland, we need strong statewide regulations to transition homes and businesses off of gas through a building energy performance standard, or BEPS, and with strong standards that support efficient electrification. And then also a zero emission heating equipment standard. And I'll add that both of these things are in the works in Maryland, but not across the finish line. And so we're keeping a really close eye on that. Maryland should not allow new buildings to burn fossil fuels that directly spew carbon pollution into the air, whether that be indoor air or the external air that everyone is breathing. So this policy has already been done in Montgomery County in Maryland and is under consideration in other counties. Folks are pushing to try to get this to happen at the state level, and we're not there yet, but you know, we continue to build momentum and support for that. And to just reiterate, like, this work is like so much more than just a scientific report, which the report is beautiful and amazing, but like the work is the relationships that folks are building, that Adama and her team are building, that Katie has been building, that all the testers have been building, and that really helps create this movement of folks that are ready to speak out and take action on this issue. It's extremely radicalizing when like folks see what the numbers in their, you know, kitchen are. Like Adama had shared with me that like she doesn't cook when her kids are home because like she doesn't want them to be breathing those things. And that's just like one example. Like it really does, you know, move people on this issue for sure. Okay, I think I'm passing it to Citra now to talk more.
Yes, thank you, Maddie. Um, so some of you who are listening might be organizers yourself, wondering if citizen science is worth adding to what I'm sure is an already packed issue agenda. And I'm here to tell you, yes, I think it is. So we've found that it has been a really strong tool to build and expand our base. So it didn't you know, take away, as organizers, we're often evaluating what's the best use of our time. And the citizen science work really has been a tool to expand our base and has incorporated tenants like Adama mentioned and expanded our work with as a faith-based organization, our the green teams at a lot of our congregations, and helped shift them from thinking really insularly about like how we can improve recycling at our congregation into thinking about how their congregation connects to the larger neighborhood and this larger ecosystem, and the impacts of methane gas and nitrogen dioxide. So as you've hopefully realized today from hearing from our speakers, the burning of fossil fuels is not just a climate issue, it's also an economic justice issue, it's a housing issue, and ultimately it's an issue of corporate power. And as the issue is intersectional, so are the solutions. So when our tenant teams are pushing for electrification, they are also pushing for mold remediation, for rent caps, for tenant protections if landlord ownership transfers. When we're advocating for job trainings, we're making sure that they're accessible for returning citizens so that when we're doing the work of electrifying, now that this nitrogen dioxide testing has showed us it's important to do electrification, we're able to also advocate for good jobs for the people doing that electrification work. So it's really expanded as an organization that wasn't doing as much environmental justice work as some of the other folks on this call. Diving in and doing the citizen science work and with an organizing approach, it has really expanded our base and strengthened all of the other issue areas that we work on. Um, and the beauty of citizen science is that that was that lesson, people were seeing that when we were in their kitchens. And it also helped do that exact same teaching for the council members that we are working with. So it broadened what the public officials that we were meeting with, what their idea of environmental justice was. Because oftentimes the only folks that are, they were expecting to be supporting the Healthy Homes Act that we pushed for so heavily, they were expecting that to, quite frankly, just be a lot of white climate activists, and that it was not the group that we were organizing. So we were able to move the legislation a lot faster because we had the backing of the housing community. We had the backing of tenants speaking directly about the testing being done in their home, and low income homeowners that were explaining to council members how the Healthy Homes Act wouldn't just help them electrify, but it would help stabilize their housing and allow them to pass their home on to the next generation instead of having to sell it and it be turned into an Airbnb. They were able to keep that generational wealth in their house. And we're really excited now that Healthy Homes is moving, and we're starting to get stories of people who had the testing done and are now electrifying and seeing the benefits of electrification and finding that like they really do not miss their gas stove. So that's been a really fun aspect of the work as well. So one of the stories that really encapsulates how the intersectional work was at the forefront for our council members is at the beginning when we were actually pushing the council member we worked primarily with to introduce the bill. So he was kind of, delaying it, and we decided to have an action where we gathered a lot of public housing residents and climate allies and all of our organizations. We gathered at Potomac Gardens, a public housing property in Ward 6 in DC, and we invited him to see a stove test being done and to walk around afterwards after the stove test in a public housing resident with very little ventilation, tiny, tiny kitchens. The numbers went up very quickly. He saw that, spoke to that resident, and then toured the property, the entire property, saw that folks were also experiencing mold, that there were roof leaks, and that really put it in perspective that, when we're looking at legislation, it's not just words on paper. That's people's lives. So being able to take him out of the council chamber and put him in that environment and have him hear directly from public housing residents who are pushing for Healthy Homes Act, who knew what electrification was and were able to effectively communicate that, that really helped quicken the pace that he introduced it, and also helped when later on there were folks wanting to take out provisions around tenants from the Healthy Homes Act. That team of tenants was able to be activated and stop that from happening. So that is a little bit of some of the work we did, and you might also be wondering now what's coming next. So as Katie shared, we're definitely still continuing to do NO2 testing. So if you're in DC or Maryland and want to get your stove tested, we are more than happy to do that. Put your name in the chat and I can follow up with you later. And we're also adding another component to it. So as winter is approaching, it's starting to get colder. We know people are going to be using not just their gas stove, but gas heating appliances. So furnaces, that kind of thing. And we're planning to test homes not only for nitrogen dioxide, but also for carbon monoxide, which we know is also a very dangerous gas. So we're continually expanding what kinds of data we're collecting, and are excited to begin doing that this winter. And we're going to continue using these investigations as an organizing tool to empower residents and build power in DC and Maryland communities. So, and that's especially important now as we are in the implementation phase of the Healthy Homes Act, and as Inflation Reduction Act money is now flowing into our communities. So, now I'm going to pass it to some of the leaders that really were at the forefront of this work and had their stoves tested, and then went on to continue organizing around this issue. So we're going to hear some firsthand accounts of stove testing. First up, we have Richard Villeneuve.
Thank you. Thank you, Sidra. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Villeneuve, and I am a volunteer with WIN, the Washington Interfaith Network. And I got involved with this beginning in 2012 on these issues, beginning in 2020. As Barbara mentioned earlier, and also noted in the report, we started with doing outdoor testing in various neighborhoods throughout the district. And then from there, within WIN, we had our own, and we still do, this biweekly group called the Green, Healthy, Affordable Buildings Group. And through the years, we talked about, okay, as we learn more, how do we raise awareness around this issue? How can we get engaged and things of that nature? I myself have a 4-year-old daughter, and so it's very important to me, just as a responsible father, a responsible resident, and as someone who cares about these issues personally as well, what I could do to get involved. And so I had my apartment tested on multiple occasions. In fact, some of the reporting is noted in the how long does NO2 persist in the air. My residence was one of those tested. So, and it was very alarming. It was high numbers, persisted over many hours. And so it's very concerning. And so, but what do you do about it? We do the things that we can. We learn about it, then we take the effort to reduce using gas appliances, increase ventilation, and also just raising awareness, right? So that everyone is around and who cares about this, who may be impacted personally or know someone who may be impacted, can take part in doing something about it. So it seems intimidating, but over time you get to learn a lot. You feel empowered, and you really feel like you're helping to raise awareness and organize, which is the key point here. And so it was a pleasure, and I continue to be involved in this, and hope that we continue to raise awareness. And now I'm going to pass it over to another one of our activists, Glenn Hall.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Glenn Hall. I'm a lifelong Ward 8 resident. And so earlier, I believe that was 2022, I had my dad's house tested for NO2. And as suspected, and to preface this, I'm his caregiver, and he's 70 years old. And I noticed every time that I would cook for him, I would get lightheaded, weak while I'm in the kitchen. And when we did the testing, it was found that, which I suspect that he had limits over the EPA recommended limit. And that really empowered me to get out there and range for others who might be using gas, but not know the hidden dangers that they might be facing, especially in my Ward 8 community. And this testing has been very fulfilling for me, just to know that I'm making an impact on an issue that's affecting a lot of people around me. So, and I just want to say thank you to the Beyond Gas Coalition for just welcoming me in and really teaching me how to do these testings. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Glenn. And thank you to everyone for your contributions today, and also for your excellent work in our citizen science investigation of the air pollution in our kitchens. Now we're on to your questions. You can ask a question by putting it in the Q&A. So you need to click the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. If you don't see it, you might need to click more And then Q&A should be one of the options, and you can type your question in there. So our first question is, what are some lessons learned? What would you do differently next time? Anyone want to take that question?
I got an idea. I'd like to jump on that one actually, because I've given it a lot of thought. I think we did really well and we got good data, but I, in retrospect, would have added some specific fields around ventilation. Did the people have ventilation to the outside? Yes or no? You know, in other words, what did they use? Did they use it? Yes or no? Did they keep their window open when they were cooking? Because we gave specific instructions that conditions should be as the family had them when they cooked, but we put notes in, but we didn't always specify, and there wasn't a field. So we couldn't dig out at the end, we couldn't dig out the data and really work numbers on those things. So I would try to foresee and add fields for specific conditions. I also think that from the beginning, we would assign a data monitor just to make sure that everything was being input correctly and, you know, that the lines were clean. And sounds like Katie's got some addition to that, and Adama.
No, I think we're just adding all of the panelists onto the
Great.
question.
But yeah, that's what I would do differently.
Okay, well, unless anyone else wants to add anything to what Barbara said, we can move on to our next question. I did want to say, folks, don't be shy about putting your questions in the chat. Just click Q&A at the bottom. Like I said, you may need to click more to see Q&A. I did on my screen. So our next question is a three-part question. It is, what is the cost of the testing units? Do you know of other air impacts on home air quality? And are you aware of other correlations with other indoor pollutants and NO2? Barbara, I think you purchased the testing units. So do you know about how much they cost?
Yeah, this lower part, the sort of device was $550 when we first bought them. And this part, the sensor head, was $650. I think the price has gone up some. We started out with the 200 series, and it's now 300 or 500. The thing to know, though, is that this sensor head can be switched off for carbon monoxide and for other pollutants. So that's pretty cool. Let me see, what were the other questions?
Other questions were, do you know of other impacts on home air quality and the correlation between other pollutants, other indoor air pollutants and NO2?
We know that when you have a gas stove in your house, there tends to be some leakage of methane and of natural gas, which also includes components of benzene and propane and other things that are bad for you. We also know that when you burn gas, in addition to nitrogen dioxide, there's carbon dioxide, there is benzene, which is a product of partial combustion, some formaldehyde, and did I say carbon monoxide, which is important. In terms of correlations, I'm not sure that that's exactly the right word, but we're going to find out. In other words, nitrogen dioxide is a product of combustion. Our impression is that carbon monoxide is more tricky, and that it happens when there's not enough oxygen, like for instance, in enclosed spaces, and if your oven's dirty and it can't, and the combustion is happening where it can't access enough air. So we'll find out.
All right, thank you, Barbara. So our next question is, which elected officials deserve to be recognized? And I'll take that question. First and foremost, Charles Allen. He is our climate champion on the DC Council. He was the sponsor of the bill. He worked to get the bill funded, although we need more funding for it to be completely implemented. He's the chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee, which is a good job for him to have, given that. I also think it's worth thanking the other co-sponsors of the bill, who are council members Matt Fruman in Ward 3, Brooke Pinto in Ward 2, Zach Parker of Ward 5, Brianne Nadeau, who's in Ward 1, Vince Gray in Ward 7, Janice Lewis George in Ward 4, and at-large council member Robert White. Also, Phil Mendelson deserves some credit. We were trying to push it through the committees, and we were pressuring him to kind of change something with the way it would work in there. I won't get into the details, but took some pressure, but he finally did it. So Charles Allen first and foremost, but also the other elected officials who I mentioned. So I'm going to move on.
We want to have the Maryland team shout out their allies.
Yes, sorry,
Yeah, Maddie or Adama, who are the big climate champions.
I would say
Adama, do you want to go first? Yeah.
I would say Delegate Charkudian. District 20 is a strong support and ally in Maryland, District 20. And
I'll also say, like,
Okay.
on the Montgomery County Council, council member Kate Stewart, like, went to a kitchen testing with Adama. Was that at your house, Adama?
Yes.
So, like,
Yeah.
we've been engaging different legislators and trying to get them, you know, to come witness kitchen testing because it is so powerful. And there's definitely, like, other folks in the, you know, Maryland General Assembly that are starting to get, you know, more engaged on this issue, but Delegate Charkudian is definitely, like, the leader.
Yeah, and on the console we had Kate and Lodke that came to do the testing with us, and also we went to testify for BEPS at their BEPS hearing. So I would say Charkudian and is a strong ally that we have in Maryland.
All right, thank you, Maddie and Adama. The next question is, were there issues informing people about issues they had limited ability to address? So we're telling them how bad the air pollution is, but if they have a gas system, you know, it's not easy to just replace all of that. Sidra, do you want to take this question?
Definitely. No, honestly, people, we were a little nervous about this at first, but strongly believe that, like, this is already happening in people's kitchens and people deserve to have that information. And we found that that encouraged people to get involved in the advocacy, because we had, you know, Adama shared that tea towel with steps that you can do in the immediate to reduce your indoor air quality exposure. But then also we have steps that we can do as organizers. So that's why we need to get involved with talking to our landlords. That's why we need to begin organizing to put government pressure, because it shouldn't be up to us to purchase those appliances all on our own. People who are low income deserve that support. So we also shared information with some higher income folks about you know, tax credits for purchasing the equipment up front. But that was what fed into why people organized.
I would say in Maryland, Northwest Park landlord has already applied for the IRA funding to switch from gas to electric with the help of all Action in Montgomery organizer and also Delegate Charkudian. So we wanna, like Sidra said, all the landlord to follow care management to go through this application so we can switch from gas to electric.
All right, thank you, Sidra and Adama. Let me go to our next question, which was, were there any before and after measurements done, i.e. before ventilation and after maximizing ventilation measures? Anyone want to take that?
Yeah, so I'll say, like, for a lot of the kitchens that we tested, like, I think that's, like, definitely an area, like, we would do more on next time. So we asked testees to keep the conditions as they normally are in their kitchen. And then at the last 15 minutes where we instructed people to turn their stove and oven off, to like open the windows or the fan, so we can like get more of a sense for how fast the NO2 can clear the air. So yeah, we like definitely that's an area that we said we want to like explore more, but we did have a sense of for a lot of homes that didn't have a vent fan, or even there was a home I tested that got levels up to above 400 that had the vent fan on the whole time, but the second they opened the window after the stove was turned off, it went back down to 0. So we have like at least that anecdotal data.
All right, thank you, Katie. Our next question is, did Beyond Gas keep track of any demographic information for the households tested or geographic data? If not, why not? And if so, how come it's not included in the report?
We kept track of what ward people live in, for those who are in DC, in Maryland, what county they live in, the type of housing they were in, so single family, public housing, a row home. We measured the kitchen size, the age of the folks who are living in those properties, and whether or not those folks had any pre-existing health conditions such as asthma. Am I missing any of the other ones, folks? I think those were the key ones.
That's it.
All right. Now we have a question that's specifically about what's going on in Maryland. The question is, do you plan on testing other fossil fuel burning equipment in the future, given Maryland Governor Wes Moore's executive order directing the Maryland Department of Environment to establish a zero emission heating equipment standard?
Do you repeat the question, Mark?
Yeah, the question is essentially, Maryland Governor Wes Moore wants to say zero emissions for HVAC systems in Maryland. So is there a consideration of testing other fossil fuel burning equipment, not just stoves? I know we have our Maryland folks. I know, Barbara, you've thought a lot about testing in the future. So whoever wants to take this one, or please do.
Yeah, I can go ahead and then let folks add. Yeah, I will just say we're really excited about the Maryland zero emission heating equipment standards, or ZHES. And like a lot of us are following it really closely, and it is very exciting and is sort of the next the next big thing here. I will say that, Barbara has given some thought, I know, about like how do we start, like what would a testing protocol look like for trying to measure, any indoor emissions that could be a result of gas burning furnace, and to heat homes, especially in the winter. And there's just like a few challenges there. I think, thinking as a scientist of like, it's really easy to just turn your stove on, and like, take the measurements there. And with the furnaces, I think there's a few more challenges in terms of, where it's located in the home. And so, we're thinking through some of that. I'll also say there's like pretty great documentation about the like NO2 emissions that come from gas burning furnaces, like to heat homes in Maryland. There's like a whole report, I think, that RMI, the organization, has put out. And so that, folks can find that too if they're interested. But yeah, NO2, anything that burns gas, the NO2 is going somewhere, whether that be, outside or, inside homes.
Yeah, and I shared with folks we're beginning to also do the carbon monoxide testing. So we'll be getting up close to some heating equipment.
And it's going to be really interesting coming up. I do think that Maddie's right. The protocol will be a little more complicated. But wintertime, when buildings are heated, checking for nitrogen dioxide in various places in the house, and also outside the house where it vents, and also carbon monoxide, like Sidra mentioned, will be an interesting next step.
All right, I'm going to try to get two more questions, and I think they're pretty good. This is the first one. I am curious about the methods regarding reaching out to renters. How did you go about dealing with any possible pushback from landlords? If you faced any, did you reach directly out to tenants?
I can start that and then pass to Adama, since you've done a lot of tenant organizing. But our organization already had a lot of existing relationships with tenant teams. And when we began doing the testing, we didn't tell the landlords. We were just going, neighbor to neighbor, seeing who wanted the testing done. And now are beginning to have conversations where we're bringing it up to the landlords. And that's kind of the model that we've used for other work also, like the when we go door to door doing building audits and then taking that to the public housing authority. We find it's really effective because we're able to say, like, look, tenants went door to door, they found all of these issues. It's happening in every single property. Here it is.
So for us also, like Sidra said, we organize tenant here. We have been organizing for a lot of issues before the NO2 testing. So we have a relation with the tenant, and also we organize with the Title I school. So I'm the PTA president where I live. That's how I start testing my own apartment. Then I share the information, and that's how we start doing the testing. We go to the food distribution. We go to any like school events, and then ask people, hey, do you want to know about the indoor air quality? And that's how we share flyer, and people reach to us, and we test here where I am in Cider Mill. At the Enclave, since we have a relation with Burns Mill Elementary School, the principal called to action in Montgomery because we organized to have a new building. We organized to have after school program there. So then at one point, the kids are not going to school. And then the principal want to know what's going on in the apartment complex where they have a lot of students who there is like high absentee. And we start going there and asking people, seeing that kids are sick. They have a lot of like sickness, respiratory illness, and all those stuff. Then we start doing the testing there and show how those the condition that the kids are living on are impacting their health to go to school. So that's how we were connected. And then at Northwest Park, we have this good relationship because of the organizing that we have been doing there with our leader, Anna Argeta. And that's when there we have connection with the landlord, and that's how we do the testing in Northwest Park.
All right, thank you, Adama. I'm going to try to just squeeze in one last question. Could you speak to the depth of training you completed for using the NO2 testing sensors, and any recommendations for how similar NO2 testing methods could be used for future as similar investigations to this one?
Anybody want to take that? Honestly, it's pretty simple. You turn it on, you turn it off, and you don't hold it upside down, which makes the sensor risk breaking. It's a fairly simple device.
All right, well, thank you. And to that point, we hope that those of you who are watching from around the country might think about taking this on to educate people in your area about the indoor air quality threat from burning gas in our homes, and also, as part of the organizing and community outreach that we heard a lot about today. So thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you to our speakers and everybody who worked on this report.
Yes, and we'd love your help sharing it out. So if you haven't already shared on social media, we can put those links for how to do that and how, you know, the hashtags we're using and who to tag. We have some sample graphic information. Press really does look at social media, so the more likely it is that people's eyes are on it, the more likely we are to spread it widely. So
And we also plan to have this webinar on our landing page. So that should, and it should be available to you all soon as well.
thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.